Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. I'm Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian. And Josh, I know you have a job to do, but I'm at a birthday party for these little kids. Can you maybe just give me 5 minutes, let them get out of here? And then, I respect you got a job, but they're kids, Josh. They're kids.
Yeah, you're. I feel like the hushed delivery of the lines is not as effective on a podcast as it is in a movie. But
Josh, I know you have a job to do, but I'm having a birthday party for little kids.
The yelling isn't any better. Jason giving a slightly less compelling performance than the stars of this film.
I don't know about that. I think Jessica Chastain and I are pretty much in the same caliber.
Yeah, no, that's what I always say. In this season of Awesome Movie Year, we're talking about the films of 2014, and we are here talking about my pick, A Most Violent Year, from writer-director J.C. Chandor, starring Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain, set in New York City in 1981 in the cutthroat world of the heating oil business.
Yeah.
So, Jason, as an East Coast person, did you know that the heating oil business was like this?
I feel like every business is like this on the East Coast. But one thing as an East Coaster, Josh, I mean, they definitely nailed the look and the feel of everything. I definitely, Oscar Isaac's got a very John Gotti look to him. And I grew up, and probably Dave did too, seeing a lot of people wearing those type of clothes, driving those type of like Lincoln Town Car types and, long caddy types. Like it was very on point as far as the look and feel.
Yeah, I love his coat in this film that he always
That's the
wears.
John Gotti coat. That's what that is.
That coat is perfect. And yeah, like you said, the vehicles, they're all like right to the T of what you see in the early 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I didn't come from that part of the country, but it certainly seemed authentic to me. I noticed when I was watching in the end credits, they have multiple graffiti artists. They had to recreate, of course, all the graffiti of the era because it's been cleaned up since then. But that also looked very authentic.
Yeah, I mean, look, attention to detail, like that's so cool. So, I mean, that goes through. We talk about someone like Robert Eggers, who we haven't covered, but we all love the detail he puts into his films. And I think that's a strength of this film as well.
Yeah, I don't know if Robert Eggers would make a movie set in the 1980s. I feel like that's too modern for him. But yes.
What horror villain could come play in the 80s for him?
I mean, he could do like some sort of primal take on like a slasher, like a Jason or a Freddy. That would be interesting. But it doesn't seem like his
Maybe he'll remake Once Bitten.
I doubt that is going to happen. But anyway, J.C. Chandor, the director of this film, is also very good with his attention to detail. This was his third film after Margin Call and All Is Lost, which I thought both were quite good. And Jason, I know you watched both of those just before this podcast to kind of fill yourself in on his work.
Yeah, I like both of them, but I didn't. This one is a clear level above those two.
Yeah, I agree. This is absolutely his best film. And I remember going into this film that I had liked those others, but this one obviously was a favorite of mine, was on my top 10 list, and certainly seemed like a big step up for him. Unfortunately, it was not a big step up in terms of making money. It was a pretty significant box office failure, grossing only $12 million on its $20 million budget. So, I mean, not a $100 million would-be blockbuster, but certainly I would say the most money he had spent on a movie thus far, and not what the result that they were hoping for. And I think this is the type of movie, too, that might have recouped some of that had it gotten a bunch of Oscar nominations, which I personally think that it should have, but it did not get nominated for any Oscars. It did get a bunch of other awards attention, including a Golden Globe nomination for Best Supporting Actress for Jessica Chastain, 3 Independent Spirit Awards nominations, again for Best Supporting Actress for Jessica Chastain, for Best Screenplay and Best Editing. The National Board of Review named it the best film, Oscar Isaac Best Actor, Jessica Chastain Best Supporting Actor, Supporting Actress rather. Lots and lots and lots of critics groups gave this awards, but it didn't break through to that higher level. And I think that maybe prevented it from getting an extra surge of interest from audiences?
Well, Josh, two things. One, it's an early A24, and we know A24 has ups and downs with how they market movies. So I wonder if this one got a little lost in the shuffle. And two, as the Jessica Chastain of this podcast, Josh, she's good in this and she's a great actor. But I was surprised with all those supporting actress wins and noms, not because of her performance, but because that character doesn't have all that much to do, I don't think.
Oh, I don't know. I think not. I was looking through this. Not only do I think that she's great in this movie, I think this is perhaps her best performance of all in any movie.
Well, there you go, underestimating the 355 once again.
Oh man, I have seen the 355, I will tell you, and it's not on this level. But no, I mean, I think she's definitely a supporting character. But as a supporting character, I feel like one of the great things about this movie is that she does a lot more than you would expect the wife character to do in this kind of like gangster movie, that she has a lot more agency, that she's the driving force behind a lot of the decisions that they make, and their relationship is interesting and complex. They give her way more than you would have expected from this kind of character in a different movie.
Well, maybe then you would have expected, but not me, Josh. I expect a lot from a lot of things.
Okay. Well, I mean, I just mean other movies of this type don't do that. And this movie maybe could have focused on her more. It would have been interesting if it was her story. That's another level that they could have gone to, because there's clearly a lot going on with her that we don't necessarily see,
Right.
But I feel like we do see a lot.
So, supporting actress, Patricia Arquette won for Boyhood. She kills it in that. Laura Dern, very good in Wild. Keira Knightley, Imitation Game, she's good. I think that movie is not that great.
Yeah.
Emma Stone, she's always going to be up for it for Birdman. And then I think the one that we could take out here is Meryl Streep for Into the Woods, if you want to slot her in.
Yeah, I mean, we will at some point later in this season get into how much I hate Birdman. But so I would take her out as well. But yeah, I mean, I agree. Patricia Arquette in Boyhood is fantastic. I just would have liked to see, I think, some nominations here for the screenplay as well. And I mean, the cinematography here, the score, all excellent. And, I think not breaking through even in one category for a nomination even made a difference here.
Well, I'm looking at actor, and you got Steve Carell, Foxcatcher, that's probably my favorite performance is his. Bradley Cooper, American Sniper, shorts a Clint Eastwood, Rah Rah America thing. Cumberbatch, Benedict Cumberbatch, Imitation Game, that makes sense. Michael Keaton, Birdman, who I probably think should have won. And then the person I would probably take out, Eddie Redmayne, The Winner, The Theory of Everything. I've never seen it, but man, is this like, what is this Eddie Redmayne kick?
Oh, we're getting off. Yeah, I'm with you. Eddie Redmayne is terrible. And honestly, I think I might take out all of those people except maybe for Steve Carell. But we're getting off track here.
No, we're on track, Josh. It was all related to the picture.
It is. So my point being, there was room for this, I think, and it just didn't get there. But critics generally like this movie very much. It has an 89% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes and ended up on a lot of critics' top 10 lists. A.O. Scott in the New York Times said, J.C. Chandor, the writer and director of this pulpy, meaty, altogether terrific new film, and Bradford Young, its supremely talented director of photography, succeed in giving this beat-up version of New York City both historical credibility and expressive power. The light is harsh, the shadows are dense, and forces of chaos seem to gather just outside the frame, their presence signaled by Alex Ebert's anxious musical score. In the course of a most violent year, there is an occasional gunshot, and some blood is shed, but the violence alluded to in the film's title is largely a matter of mood rather than action, of whispers, not noise.
Yeah, it's definitely the threat of violence along with the actual violence, right? So I appreciated the shout outs there. Bradford Young, I marked down, the cinematographer who got an Oscar nom for Arrival, and he did Solo, the Star Wars movie. So he's definitely a talented DP. Alex Ebert, Josh, I covered as a music writer when he was the lead singer of Edward Sharpe and the Magnetic Zeros.
Oh, not Edward Sharpe?
He is Edward Sharpe.
Oh, so that's a pseudonym.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Alabama, Arkansas, I can take my mom and pa. Diddle-dee-dee-dee-doo-doo.
That's good. You know what? I did not know that about him or that band.
Home.
Okay.
Listeners, if you knew that, write into Awesome Movie.
Yeah, thank you. So no, I thought the score for this movie was fantastic, and I wasn't familiar with him as a composer or apparently as a indie rock musician or whatever.
Yeah.
But
he did win Golden Globe for All Is Lost, another Chandor movie. So
yeah, and Chandor, I mean, as we'll maybe talk about later with a lot of these actors too. One of these filmmakers who works with people consistently over and over again.
How fortunate for all of them, considering his last movie. What a prize for all of them.
Yeah, well, hey, they got paid, I'm sure. So that's something at least. But yeah, I mean, I think one of the things he mentions here too, and maybe one of the reasons why this movie didn't get more money at the box office is that you see the title and maybe people thought this would be like an action movie or something more tense and suspense. I think this movie is very tense and very suspenseful. I mean, it has a car chase at one point.
Ooh, a car chase.
It is very methodical, and it is a lot about like the threat of violence or whatever. And I think it's very engrossing, but it's not surprising that it wasn't something that people jumped to see.
I love movies like that when they're done well. I mean, that's such an easy thing to say, but it's a hard thing to pull off. Another movie, maybe a few years earlier, and we've talked about Sidney Lumet on the show, Before the Devil Knows You're Dead. I really like these kind of slow burn, kind of real life, gritty thrillers, you know? So, and I thought Chandor pulled this one off really well. So, you know, if you didn't see it because you thought there was going to be more shoot 'em ups and bang bangs, then you should revisit it.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like this is a movie in general that maybe has been forgotten from this period, and people should absolutely check
Not
that out.
anymore because of you, buddy.
No, right. Once we give it the awesome movie year stamp of approval, the streaming statistics are going to skyrocket. That always happens, you know, with our films.
Yeah.
So Sidney Lumet, as you said, was mentioned in a number of reviews as a big influence on this film, including Kenneth Turan in the Los Angeles Times, who said, "A most violent year is the most welcome kind of throwback. It brings to mind the fierce New York-based productions of Sidney Lumet in particular, but also the whole notion of character-driven, the clock is ticking melodramas in general. A vibrant crime story filled to overflowing with crackling situations, taut dialogue, and a heightened, even operatic sense of reality. A Most Violent Year captures us and doesn't let go. Writer-director J.C. Chandor has now made a trio of gripping films, each dealing in its own way with people trying to hold their own as a world they thought they knew closes in and threatens to snuff them out. These pictures all have one foot in classic Hollywood, in the unapologetic moviness of films such as Lumet's Serpico and Prince of the City, but they never feel less than completely modern."
Yeah, I mean, obviously we covered Dog Day Afternoon, and I think that's a very apt comparison to this. Like, you know, who's the good guy? Who's the bad guy? Everyone's stealing from everyone. Let's go to the gritty, grimy streets of New York. And also, I think this does a good job of developing like kind of fun side characters, you know, even though I said I wanted maybe a little more meat on the Chastain bones there. But I do think the ones like the little bits like seeing Jerry Adler as, you know, the Hasidic Jew that they're making the deal with, and Christopher Abbott, he gets a little screen time, but you learn a little about him, and it's a well cast film as well as a well made film.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are his rivals in the heating oil industry, Alessandro Nivola, who plays this incredibly rich guy who alludes to, you know, some sort of criminal past in his own family. And I love the scene with the younger woman who has taken over from her grandfather. And, you know, she looks like she's in her mid-20s maybe. And of course, especially in the 1980s in New York, I mean, she's definitely the only woman involved in this industry, not behind the scenes like Jessica Chastain, but, you know, just you get a whole glimpse into what this world must have been, where she talks about how, you know, her parents weren't, you know, didn't have the fortitude to take over the business or something. Like, you get the sense there's a whole story there that we're just getting a tiny piece of. And I like that.
Well, that, you know, that's what we could say with the Chastain character too, right? She's like, you better handle this or I'll call my dad. And, that type. And she, when the DA is talking to her and she's like, my husband is not my father, and we know he's like a kind of low rent gangster, but we don't know much else about him. And I could have used a little more there, but like I said, like overall, just a real good, gritty, thought out film.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, one of the things I liked about this movie is that it doesn't sort of expand on all that. I feel like a more conventional movie would have started and then had a bunch of flashbacks to like, here's them first meeting, and here's her father, and here's how he took over the business, and it would just be a bunch of hand holding that would be unnecessary. And I like that we start where it's like the business is established, he's in this industry, he's already built it up, and now we've got this particular situation that he's dealing with, and that's what the movie's about, just this one window of time of like a month.
Right. I didn't mind that. I agree with you. That's good that we did that. And we had the ticking clock with like you have to pay for this by this time or you're going to lose your deposit on this piece of property. And I really thought when he explained why he wanted that property, that was really cool because the explanation really opened up, the kind of world. I just think within the I didn't want any flashbacks. Don't get me wrong. But I just wanted a little more, to round certain things out. That said, I really like this movie, so I'm like nitpicking on this one. So.
Yeah. All right. No, that's fair. And I like that too. I feel like this was the kind of thing where probably almost no one watching this movie knows anything about the details of the heating oil industry. And he gives you just enough to understand the stakes without getting lost in like jargon or things that we wouldn't care about.
Right. And then they do explain it, why the DA is after him, why the other heating magnates are after him. Going back, Josh, you mentioned Alessandro Nivola. Is anyone more underrated than this guy right now? Like he delivers in everything he's in, and he's so charismatic, and he might be like one of our great, like kind of second or third leads in a movie as a character actor. But I really think he's super talented, this guy.
Yeah, I mean, he has a very small part here. We did mention when we talked about faults, his starring role in Riley Stern's film, The Art of Self-Defense. And yeah, I
he's
think
great in that.
He's great in that. And he's good here. I mean, again, there's only so much you can do with a part like that. But he has one particular scene where Oscar Isaac's character, after the bank has refused him the second part of his loan, is trying to go around to all these various people trying to put the money together. And he has one great scene where he just very quietly kind of gives you the sense of how dangerous he really is. But otherwise, he's more in the background, but he's absolutely very good.
Cool.
Yes. So finally, Dana Stevens in Slate was not a particular fan of this. She said, J.C. Chandor's A Most Violent Year is a most curious movie, one with nearly all the elements of a classic crime family saga, and yet somehow lacking the moral complexity and emotional heft of the films to which it pays fastidious aesthetic homage. The New York set urban thrillers of Sidney Lumet and Coppola's Godfather series. I'm an admirer of Chandor's, but A Most Violent Year strikes me as his weakest work so far. For all its artfully established mood and wealth of period detail, the story is too self-consciously mythic, its ideas and themes too clearly signposted, for it to ever spring to vivid dramatic life.
Well, I disagree.
I too disagree.
Yeah, Dana. Dana. I mean, look, Josh, I had seen Triple Frontier before this, and that's just a fun, action shoot 'em up. We got to get this across the mountain before everyone kills us type thing. I liked Margin Call. As you know, I like political movies and financial movies. That's a financial movie. I think there was one more screw it needed to turn for me to get to that next level. And then All Is Lost is an incredibly well-made movie. But I could, where, Robert Redford's lost at sea and it's just him in a boat trying to survive. I mean, I could see how that would, one, turn you on to that or turn you off to that. It's good. They're all good, but this is by far the best of the bunch.
Yeah, I agree too. I definitely think this is his best film. And at the time, this was really exciting, I think, because it's like, oh, here's a guy who's made two very good films. And now he's really stepping up and making this great movie and taking his career and his art to a new level. And as I'm sure we'll talk about more, that's not really how things went, unfortunately. But this film is great. And so, I mean, I wanted to include that kind of dissenting perspective, but I don't agree with her. I think this film is fantastic. I think it very much captures the feel and the complexity and the mood of those classic movies. I mean, I definitely thought about The Godfather, Oscar Isaac clearly channeling a bit of early Pacino, including in his hairstyling. And, I was thinking about relation to Jessica Chastain. It's almost like The Godfather if they didn't close the door to Diane Keaton, if she got to participate in things that were going on. So,
Yeah, so
I think,
I went more to Goodfellas for that,
yeah,
because Karen was a little more, Karen, what did you do, Karen? It's a little more behind she's a little more involved.
right. Yeah. I mean, but Scorsese gangster movies are obviously an influence here. I think Michael Mann is a big influence here too. So, I mean, all of this great stuff. And I think he's living up to that.
And Josh, there is that scene towards the end, without giving away spoilers, where we learn about Anna and some of her activities. That's the Jessica Chastain character. And Oscar Isaac basically gives her the, Anna, what did you do, Anna? Speech right there.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. He does. But I feel like even though he blows up there, they kind of reconcile. Like, I really like their relationship because I felt like they were both strong and smart. Yeah. And they supported each other in their own kind of fucked up way.
But there was also a given conflict on their philosophy of how they should do things. So there was always a tension between them, which I liked. And, like I said with Chandor, when he goes and he explains why Oscar Isaac's character wants the property, all these times that Anna is saying, or other people are saying, hey, we have to get more violent and hit them back the way they're hitting us. And he keeps turning it down. We do get the explanation of why he does that, which I think is important.
Right. And I mean, you could argue that he turns out to be right? The driver who arms himself against his wishes ends up in a much worse situation than if he simply had been dumped out of his truck and had it stolen. So, I think he's validated there in a way. So, Jason, you said you'd not seen this or the early Chandor films, but you marathoned them all.
I earnested it up like Dave would do. I had seen Triple Frontier. That's my type of movie. I don't think it's great, but it's an easy, fun watch. So the only one I haven't seen is your favorite, Kraven the Hunter. But no, he's an interesting filmmaker. In a way, it kind of reminded me of like earlier David O. Russell stuff where you like never knew what he was going to tackle next. And there were some really strong performances. So like I said, I like those first two. This is definitely the best of the bunch and one of your best picks, buddy. That's what I thought when I was watching. I was like, man, Josh is on a roll lately.
Well, thank you. I'm glad that you liked it. And yeah, this was my third time seeing it. I watched it when it first came out. And I think, again, not long after, maybe a year later or even less, to write another piece on it. So it's still been a little while, but I think it's great. I had not seen those earlier ones since they were initially released, but I remember liking those as well. And Triple Frontier is fun. Kraven, not so much. But we hope that J.C. Chandor will get a chance to make another movie like this.
It looks like he's getting back on track. But now that you guys brought up that jacket, I think I'm going to find one and go as Abel Morales for Halloween this year.
That'll be the one character that everyone recognizes when you're out there.
The lead from Our Most Violent Year? Come on, people.
I think that would be fantastic. So, Dave, had you seen this before?
I saw it when it first hit like rental or whatever, back when this came out. And I've been wanting to revisit it ever since then because I really did not get into it. I watched it like really late at night. I was kind of falling asleep from the pacing of it, well, not the pacing. It's just a slow burn,
Yeah,
and
it is.
Yeah. And so like it was late and I didn't really get into it. So I've been wanting to give it another chance ever since then. And I'm glad that you picked it because it's very good.
All right. So you liked it a bit more, maybe?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So, Jason, anything else you want to say about the background of this film?
Alex Ebert, no relation to Roger Ebert from our last episode.
Thank you for that clarification.
No, the one thing I want to say is we talk about opposite, other types of casting. And before Oscar Isaac, it was Javier Bardem in that role. And we know he's a monster, too. I think that just kind of shows you how locked in he was on getting the right actors for the part because Oscar Isaac did a great job. But I think Javier Bardem would have also done a great job. So he seemed to really know the type that he wanted for these characters.
Yeah, I mean, Javier Bardem is great, and I saw that as well. But I wonder, like, Javier Bardem is, I think, like 10 years older. And I feel like the fact that the character is not that old is part of it. Like, he's really ambitious and he's taking on this industry when, maybe he hasn't waited his turn as from the perspective of some other people. So I like that he went a little younger with the casting, if that was his decision or not.
This was definitely an exciting time for the Oscar Isaac ascent to superstardom.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, it was. So we'll come back and talk more of our general thoughts on A Most Violent Year. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2014, we're talking about my pick, A Most Violent Year, from writer-director J.C. Chandor. And one thing I also liked, you see the title and you think the movie is going to take place over a year, which it does not. It takes place over like a month, but it is referencing the year 1981, which is a record year of violence in New York City. And there's just this constant background noise of news reports about horrific murders and like serial killers and gangland shootings. And I really like that as a way to establish the atmosphere in the background.
Yeah, I agree with you. I noticed that, as you know, I just kind of wrapped up on a short, and I'm really focused in on sound design now. A movie that I really love that I mentioned on Dave's podcast this morning that I know you didn't like was Ephes, where they use that kind of similar technique of always kind of playing the radio to give local color. And in this one, you did hone in on that exact fact, which I think, Bad Lieutenant did it in its own way when we watched that one too. But this is all about like, hey, another person was murdered here and another person was killed here. And it definitely gave some background to what, the world that we've kind of talked about here, which we've mentioned some great filmmakers. I also think of like Spike Lee with Clockers or something like that, and really getting into that the more dangerous New York, and not in a good way, Josh.
Would it be in a good way? How would it be in a good way?
Do you guys remember? I think it was 2021, the year after the pandemic. There was like a lot of violence on the Strip here in Las Vegas. There was like nonstop like fights and shootings and stabbings and things going on. It reminded me of that. I don't know. Just brought that to mind. But, yeah.
I feel like this was probably way worse than that.
Oh, yeah.
Now crime is so much lower now historically overall that we hear, we get more attention to those individual incidents. And I think that was part of the point too, that like at no point when the radio is on and they're mentioning these things, do characters react in any way. It's just like, oh, okay, that's just what's going on in the background.
Yeah, this was New York in the 80s and the 70s. Like we learned very violent and not in a good way.
Right. But I mean, I also like that you established that we have that in the background, but then also Abel has a radio for the company in his car. And sometimes we hear that in the background and we hear like the dispatcher talking to the drivers or whatever. And those sort of run together. And so then there's a violent incident with a driver saying, oh my God, I'm being hijacked or whatever. And it all just sort of melds together, which I liked.
Yeah. So the impetus of the film is Bell had bought this business from his wife Anna's father, and he's trying to expand it out. And there are all these kind of like, I mean, what would you call them? They're in a way, they're all mafioso, whether they're in the mafia or not, right? Like kind of gangsters, I guess, who run these kind of different heating companies in different territories in New York. And Abel has moved in on some of them. And then his trucks start getting robbed. Like cars will just pull up in front of it on a 59th Street bridge, and gunmen will come out and beat up the driver and take the truck and then sell the oil off to these other magnates. And part of the mystery is, who are they working for? Are they working for this guy, that guy? And we do find out the answer later on. And that's why that piece of property is also so important to Abel. But he's really just trying to keep everything below the boiling point before he could close this deal.
Yeah. And as you said, it's the ticking clock of the deal that kind of frames the story. We begin with him signing this document with the Hasidic Jews who own this adjacent property to his business. And they tell him, he gives them this giant deposit, like suitcases full of cash, and that he has 30 days to get the rest of the money. Otherwise, they keep the deposit and he loses the property and they sell it to one of his competitors. And so all of these challenges that he faces make it harder for him to close that deal at the end of the movie. And so there is that ticking clock. And I think that gives it the suspense. But on the other hand, it's a ticking clock about like a bank loan. And I think not the same. You see that it's like a gangster movie and you think it's going to be, about murders and that's not really what this movie is about.
Well, I mean, there are constant obstacles put in his place, right? There's the violence, there's the relationships with the other heating people, there's the bank, there's the DA investigating him, right? So there's always, and then there's the personal conflicts he's having with his wife, right? So there's always layers on layers of it. So I don't think you need a ton of, bang, bang, shoot 'em ups here because you're building so much conflict in other ways.
I agree. And I think because we see at the beginning, we see that driver getting beat up and the truck being stolen, we understand that there is the threat of violence, that at any point it could escalate further and we could see people shooting each other. And I think that contributes to the tension. And again, I like all that. I'm just thinking of what maybe audiences were left wanting about a movie like this. And even some of the movies that we're talking about that are influences on it, like those Scorsese movies or Sidney Lumet movies, I think are a bit more violent. But this movie, I find it riveting because it's always the razor's edge point of Abel's, not only his business falling apart, his life falling apart, or perhaps his life ending, because all of these rivals are very dangerous people.
Well, I love that you mentioned Michael Mann, who, as you know, he has my heart, Josh. I'm a big Michael Mann fan. But if you look at like Heat, obviously, and go back to Thief, the characters are so well drawn and their motivations are so well drawn. And I think that's a fair comparison to Abel and like, hey, whatever I have to do to get to this finishing point, I'm going to get there, but I'm going to think it out why I'm going to utilize the tactics that I use.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the characters are very well drawn. And I think that goes back to what I was saying, that there are so many moments where you just get a glimpse into a whole realm of other things that are happening. Like there's this scene where he goes to see his younger brother, who's like a college football player. And he's like, hey, I need you to sign this document because I'm putting another mortgage on this apartment building that we own. And so there's obviously a whole history there of them kind of going into business together, or maybe Abel putting his brother's name on some investment so that he can help his brother build equity or whatever as well. And we only see him in that one scene, but it really adds to our sense of who this guy is and his very deep. I mean, one of the things about him is he has this very strong sense of like ethics and morality, and there are things he will do and there are things he absolutely will not do in terms of violence. And he is very adamant that he's a legit businessman. He's not a gangster. And, we get a sense of how he views himself.
That scene, Josh, I think there's some, again, if we're nitpicking, there's some fat on that scene where it's like, hey, girls didn't look like this when I was in college. And that's like very basic, like kind of like, hey, this dude's in here for one scene, so let's build around that. But, one issue I had with the movie, Josh, that is just a personal issue. We get so much Albert Brooks at the beginning, and I love Albert Brooks, and he's great. And this was such a fun time period where he's doing stuff like this and Drive, and much earlier, or whatever, 10 years, 15 years earlier, Out of Sight, when he plays like these scuzzy lawyers or like bad guys. He's so great. And he just disappears until like the third act or the end of the second, but he's so heavily featured in the first 30 minutes. I really thought he would be there for the run of the film.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like he does keep popping up periodically. And I didn't remember every detail of the plot. And at one point late in the movie, I thought, oh, does he like betray Abel? When Abel finally catches Christopher Abbott's character, the guy who's been robbing the trucks, and he's beating him up and is saying, who hired you? For a moment, I thought, oh, did Albert Brooks hire him for some reason? Is that what's happening? And it's not at all. And I like that he is absolutely this loyal guy. He's the consigliere or whatever. He does everything. And even when Abel gets mad at him because he knew that Anna, the wife, was skimming off the top. And, it's just, he's like, you should have told me. And Albert Brooks is like, you're right. I should have told you. And that's it. Like, they have this very much like him with Anna. Like, he gets really mad and then he's like, okay, you did this. You took this money. We're going to use it. And they're good. I like that about their relationship.
Right. He does try to logic his way into being not a criminal, even though he's clearly a criminal, right? So you do see that also with that driver that you're talking about, Julian,
Yeah.
where, Julian wants to have what Abel has, and Abel's kind of not only his boss, but maybe a mentor to him. But a lot of that has to do with like, hey, I want to get to where you go, so Abel can lean on him to do things like that. And he does try to have that same type of blunt, matter of fact talks with him, and it does not work out the same.
Yeah, I mean, there's again a lot under the surface there where Abel is clearly either an immigrant or like the child of immigrants. We see that he speaks Spanish with Julian's. I don't know if that's meant to be his wife or his sister, the woman that he goes to see after Julian is kind of on the run, and where he's putting in the effort to take someone else from that background and help him out. But at the same time, he's laser focused on the business. There's a great scene early on where after Julian comes back from the hospital and he's all beat up and he's on crutches, and Abel helps him get home, and Julian is going, about to go inside, and he says to Abel, hey, do you think I'm ready for sales? After he's just like literally been beaten up in the, to defend the business. And immediately Abel is like, no, you're not. And I appreciated that because it's like that shows you his compassion, but also he's like, that doesn't override the pragmatism.
That's the most important thing for him. And that's why that property is so important. And when you finally learn, and it's like, well, it's right on the water, we can be importing all of our own fuel and not have to worry about getting stuck up on, the bridges or anything like that. Like, he's got a real plan, and then we can disperse the fuel in all these different ways. So it's just he above all is like an end game type guy, and it's like, oh well, I guess I can sort of dance around my morals if it gets me there.
Right. I mean, he's, as you said, he is a criminal, even if he wants to say he's not a criminal, but he's a criminal because there's literally no way to be in this business without being a criminal, I think is the point here.
I mean, is it? I don't know. We don't know enough about it. He's obviously bilking his customers. So, Josh, I have a question for you. So, Anna and Abel and their family move into this like amazing new mansion at the beginning, and right away there is a kind of like attempted robbery, and we don't really ever see who the attempted robber is, or and Anna's like, this is clearly one of your rivals trying to get at us. And Abel said, we're in a new neighborhood and we're rich. It's just a random stick up type thing. Did you care about that loose end at all?
I mean, I didn't care about it as a loose end. I mean, I cared about it happening in terms of how it drives the story, because it shows that they're vulnerable in their house and that the family is vulnerable, not just Abel's business, not just the drivers, not just himself, but his wife and his kids. He's got these young daughters, and of course he wants to protect them too. But yeah, we don't find out. I mean, he says, oh, it's just a random robbery, and then she finds a gun later on, or the daughter finds a gun and picks it up, and then Anna grabs it away from her. And so she's saying, no, this was definitely someone here to kind of intimidate us. On the other hand, if that was the point, it wasn't very effective because the guy just sort of skulked around outside and then sucker punched Abel and ran away, didn't use the gun at all, not only didn't shoot the gun, but didn't even point it at him and threaten him with it. So maybe it was just random, but I think it's fine as a loose end because it shows you that there's just this general threat all the time, and you don't always know where it comes from.
Yeah, and we got that, a lot in The Sopranos and stuff like that, which makes sense. So I agree with you. I mean, and it also kind of added that tension with Anna, like, look, dude, our kids just picked up a gun. You better get this together or I will.
Right. I mean, and I think even when we sort of find out who's behind it, we don't really find out, right? He catches Christopher Abbott and beats him up. And the guy says, look, I don't work for anyone. I just sold some oil to this one, particular refinery or facility or whatever. And Abel knows, okay, that facility is owned by this guy. And he goes to the barber shop and he confronts that guy. And the guy admits that he bought some, but he's like, I wasn't the only one. So we don't even know for sure, like, who else has been supporting these robbers by buying from them. It could be one other person. It could be every single other person who's at that table at that one point when he gathers them all and tells them to stop. And the point is, it's just always a threat from everyone. And that's what you just have to deal with.
Well, and they even say like, hey, you came into our territory and you're aggressive, so we had to hit back at you, but we respect you. So that's why we didn't hit back the way we might have wanted to hit back. And yeah, it's a dirty business, a hot, dirty business, Josh, because of heat.
Right. Yes. That is. And there's another great scene too. I mean, we don't really pay much attention to the business as like what its actual purpose is theoretically, which is to provide heating oil to customers. But there's a great scene of Abel talking to their new recruits about how to sell the customers. And it's very like Glengarry Glen Ross, right? When he's talking about what you have to do, and you make eye contact for too long, and you always take the fancy option when they offer you something to drink or whatever. And I like that there was one moment there where we can see like he's also very good at selling. Like he's not just good at muscling out these competitors, but he's good at the business itself, which is to sell people heating oil and convince them that he's the best person for it.
And one of the kids goes out and follows his tactics and gets strong-armed. I see. That's the thing, like, and it doesn't matter. It wasn't like, wait, what are the logistics of this? Because he was in the neighborhood of someone else's turf, and the guy was like, just come outside for a second. And then there was a goon waiting for him to beat him up and dump him in the back of the river, bro.
Yeah, I mean, and that's essentially no different from what happens to Julian getting beat up and the truck stolen. It's not about hurting or whatever those particular people. It's about hurting the business. Yeah. And the problem we don't see, I mean, that salesman, he shows up back at the office and, he's clearly been beat up, but he's okay. We don't see what he does afterwards. But Julian's problem is that, he can't handle it, right? He decides to get the gun, and then he shoots at these people, and then he runs from the cops, and he does everything wrong that leads him sort of to the moment he ends up with at the end of the movie in a tragedy that really doesn't need to have happened. I mean, I think it's on the one hand showing that Abel can be kind of ruthless because he doesn't really emotionally react. But on the other hand, he tried, right? He tried to help this guy out to whatever degree that he can. Yeah, and still remain legitimate. That's the point. It's like, I'm not going to help you run from the police, but here, I will hire you the best lawyer possible. I told you shouldn't have had a gun, and that kind of stuff. So I think we're meant to see that he is ruthless in his way, but not heartless.
I also liked after Julian defended himself against the stick up, and they're all running from the cops, that Christopher Abbott is like, you're an idiot. All you had to do was give us the truck and we would all have been fine. But in case you're wondering, there's an exit 4 flights down. You could just run away on the beach. So it showed that there was like nothing personal about it.
Right, exactly. And I feel like he's right that there's nothing that individually Julian is going to lose by giving. He doesn't own the truck, and he knows he's not going to get fired for having done this. And he kind of brings it on himself. But part of that is because he wants to be like Abel, right? He wants to be strong. He wants to be powerful. And he thinks maybe that this is the way to do that.
I mean, also, in the more simpler terms, he's being held up at gunpoint. And how many times can you get away with that without getting hurt, right? Like, he's trying to defend himself. He's got a family. I get it from both sides. So, Dave, what lessons did you take from this film? Now that you're a business owner, what practices are you going to institute?
Yeah. Is this what it's like in the cutthroat record store business?
Oh yeah, you have to be. Absolutely. You got to keep your eyes on your enemies at all times and just know what's going on.
Do you need me to go intimidate some other store in town for you?
You'd be the first person I'd call, Jason.
I appreciate that.
So. Yeah.
I mean, so Dave, what was it? I mean, was there anything particular you liked more this time and you felt worked better for you this time?
I really liked, really it all comes down to Oscar Isaac. I mean, I think that Jessica Chastain is good, and I think a lot of the supporting performances are good, but he is just, I think, great here, as he usually is. And it's just a really interesting character in the way that it's constantly on that verge of bubbling over, and he's trying to just keep it together as everything's coming in on every angle. I just like really kind of connected with it this time around. One thing that I was thinking about, and I don't know you guys' thoughts on this. Did you think, because you had mentioned earlier about the possible Javier Bardem casting, but they ended up going younger. Did you think there was anything to the youthfulness of him as a character? Because I thought like the kind of naivety or idealism of his character not wanting to be violent, even though everyone around him is being violent. It's almost like they're like young people getting into this business and just kind of trying to be positive about it when really it's inevitable that it's all going to be shitty.
Yeah, that's really smart. That's a good point, Dave. You're saying they probably should have just opened up a Airbnb in the Hudson Valley somewhere, and
they would have a much easier time if they did that.
That is a good point, though, Dave. You just took Josh. You just dunked on Josh.
I don't disagree with his point. And I was saying that I feel like it was a better choice to cast a younger actor, whether that was the point or that was just how it worked out. Yeah. And I think you see, like when he goes to that meeting, when he calls on all his rivals, that they are almost all older than him.
Except that one girl, basically.
Right.
The rest of them all are.
Yeah. And she still has, even though she runs the business, she still has her grandfather kind of consulting or whatever. He comes to that meeting and he's there in the room when Abel shows up to ask them for a loan. And so, yeah, I think that is part of it. And it's maybe not just the idealism, but the idea that like, hey, you didn't wait your turn. Like you're doing all this and you're not allowed to do that yet, and we need to kind of smack you down a bit.
Abel has Albert Brooks there at all of his meetings as well. So, I mean, he's got that older kind of, knowledge base behind him as also.
Right. I mean, and you get the sense that Albert Brooks, it's interesting. I wasn't sure as I was watching the movie, like what exactly his function is. Some reviews call him the lawyer. Others called him a consigliere. And I feel like it's somewhere in between there where he's a sort of all-purpose like resource for Abel to consult with. And he is probably a lawyer, but he's also more than just that.
Well, yeah, he's definitely a lawyer. I think a consigliere is also he's a fixer for him.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, he is. So, and I mean, just going back to that, the young woman, the other thing I loved with her is the scene where Abel goes to ask them for a loan and she's talking about how she's taken over the business now. And you see the grandfather and he's kind of like scribbling on some pad. And I feel like you think like, oh, maybe he's got dementia or he doesn't know what's going on and he's just there as a courtesy or whatever. And she's doing it all. And he doesn't say anything until finally Abel lays out what he's asking for. And then he just looks up and immediately he says something like, well, what are the terms of the loan or something? It's like, oh, okay. He's been paying attention the whole time. He does know what he's doing still, even if she's in charge. And so I like that kind of unexpected moment.
Right. I think that's the scene where we learn why he wants that property so much. Or is that it's either that or his second meeting with Jerry Adler, which just good stuff all the way around, Josh.
Yeah. And I feel like we should mention David Oyelowo as the DA who is prosecuting, but is also out for his own ambitions as well, that he's pursuing this case not necessarily because he sees it as sort of in the cause of justice or whatever, but because this is what is expected of him, or if he can produce some results here that will help him politically. But hey, if he can team up with Abel and that'll help him politically instead, then he's open to that. He's not exactly righteous in any way.
I'll tell you who wouldn't put up with that. Lawman Bass Reeves.
Yes, another David Oyelowo role. So should we rate this one out of 5 camel hair coats?
Oh, yeah, we'll go with that. Sure. Josh, given it, you're on fire with your picks lately, buddy. 4 camel hair coats for me. I really love this movie. And if you have recommendations of this genre that we're missing, like this is kind of under the radar, please let us know because we're big fans of it.
Yeah, I am too. And I also will give this a 4 Camel hair coats out of 5. I've seen this a few times now. I think it holds up really well. I do think it's still underrated and an excellent example of this genre. Just everything about it, I think, really works. So, Dave, how do you rate this?
I'm going with 3.5 of those coats, but I might even go to 4 next time. I think I gave it a 3 the first time I saw it. So,
for the record, Dave's rating of Kraven the Hunter is 4. So,
we could talk about that in the legacy.
Good. I think we will. We'll talk about the legacy of A Most Violent Year when we come back. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2014, we have been talking about J.C. Chandor's A Most Violent Year. And as we just alluded to, part of the legacy, sadly, of this film is that because it was not a success at the box office, I think he did not get the opportunities to make more original films that he might have liked. He's made a couple of films since then, both of which are kind of director for hire projects. Jason, you talked about Triple Frontier, which is a good movie. I think it's an entertaining movie, but it's definitely more of the like action, the kind of thing that I think maybe people wanted or some people wanted from this film and didn't get. You do get in that movie where there's a sort of complex plot about stealing this money and how do we get it and we have to transport it. But there's a lot of action and a lot of shooting and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was thinking about this because is it like, hey, well, I went for a big shot on my Prestige and it didn't go well, so I'm going to take what I could get? Or is it the idea of, we see this with so many filmmakers, obviously you want to create a relationship with Netflix. Maybe this was something he wanted to do and Netflix was the green light for him. Or maybe he did this to establish that relationship. And then, of course, Kraven, everyone's going to take that Marvel bucks, but I didn't see it. I know I'm going to watch it just as a completist, and I already regret making that decision.
Yeah, it's definitely not good. But you're right. I mean, I can see the motivation on Triple Frontier. That was a project that he was brought into. Catherine Bigelow was originally the director on it, and she left the project, and he was brought in. So it wasn't something that he originated and brought to Netflix. It was a chance to work on a project, and he was offered that, and he did get a writing credit on it. So maybe he was able to reshape it in a way that fit his interests or sensibilities. But I think it's different from his previous films where they would have originated with him. And certainly that's the case for Kraven as well. And yes, of course, you're right. It's probably hard to pass up that money or the chance to make a movie on that scale. It is, however, not a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. It is part of this weird Sony spin-off universe with the Spider-Man related characters, but no Spider-Man. And that was a dicey prospect to begin with. So I don't know. And if his hope in taking on that project was, hey, I'll do this big superhero blockbuster thing, and that'll kind of move me up to the next level. Of course, that didn't work out either. That movie was a flop. And unlike A Most Violent Year, where people, I think, can look at it and be like, well, of course, it didn't, break through to a huge mainstream audience, given the topic, given the subject matter. Something like Kraven, if it doesn't make a bunch of money at the box office, there's no other point to it. And it's not good. It's not a good movie. You can't even look at it and say like, well, he did something interesting and audiences didn't respond. It's just bad.
Counterpoint, Dave.
Yeah,
it's
Dave
so much fun.
Loves Kraven.
Yeah, it's so much fun. It's dumb as hell. It's a mess. You could tell that Sony fiddled with it like they did all of their movies, but I had a blast with it. It's just silly, over the top comic book movie stuff. And I don't get the desire for serious comic book movies. I want them to be goofy and silly. Alessandro Nivola is so much fun in this movie as the villain. I'm all for it. I think people the whole Sony thing, it's become almost like an inside joke amongst everybody, where everybody just immediately is like, this is going to be trash. Let's gang up on it. And the movies are not good movies. Don't get me wrong, but I really love this one. It's so much fun.
I don't understand your points on a lot of these things. You're like, I don't know why they're ganging up on it, even though we all know that they're terrible. And then on top of that, you're like, I don't know why a comic book movie would be serious. Do you dislike all of the Nolan Batman movies?
I would never rewatch one of those movies. They're fine.
Yeah, I'm actually with Dave on the Nolan Batman movies. I'm not really a big fan. I mean, they're fine, yes. But I think I'm Dave, I'm with you. Like, we just talked about Guardians of the Galaxy a few episodes ago. That is a very fun, very silly comic book movie that was hugely successful, that I think is quite entertaining. And I don't think Craven does any of that. Craven tries hard to be serious, that J.C. Chandor is not fun, goofy comic book movie guy. He does a lot of stuff. Aaron Taylor Johnson is so serious in that movie in a disastrous way.
I will agree with you 100% that Guardians of the Galaxy is in a good way actually trying to be fun and silly and a good time, and it does it successfully. Whereas Kraven the Hunter is just silly and goofy, and it's like I said, it's a mess of a movie though, and narratively there's nothing there, you know what I mean? But like I had a blast with it though.
Did you enjoy it more than A Most Violent Year?
Roughly the same.
Again, I mean, I get it. You got to work and everything, but how many times have we referenced a filmmaker who's given up 2 at least years of their career because they're making some shitty ass Marvel movie or Marvel adjacent movie that no one's ever going to remember? I
would much rather him make good movies than make Kraven the Hunter, but that doesn't stop me from having a great time with it.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Jason. I think that's the thing, is that even before a movie like Craven is a failure, even sometimes when these movies are not a failure, you think this is what these filmmakers are devoting so much of their time to, and at best it's going to be okay. And I think that is disappointing. On the other hand, we don't know how many other original projects he might have tried to get made and failed to get made. It was interesting reading. Supposedly Sony had, greenlit an original project that he had written in 2024. But at least what I read in this sort of like news article on Deadline, it was like, oh, thanks to the positive studio response to his latest cut of Craven, they've offered him the chance to make this original movie. And given the response to Craven, I wonder if that's still a possibility. So, I mean,
what is that movie?
It was just like there was not a lot of detail about it, just that it was an original thriller that he had written. So I don't know if that's going forward at all or not. You look at IMDb and he has some supposed involvement with TV series talking about 1970s crime films, TV series based on The Conversation and on The French Connection. But those listings are very old, and I don't think that those things are happening. So I don't know what his next project will be. But hopefully it will be something that, despite the failure of Craven, he will get the chance to do a film that he's actually, passionate about. And that's an original project.
The one I marked down, The Robber, a marathon runner robs banks. That sounds perfect for him.
That does. And that's another thing that's on IMDb that's kind of not been updated in a while. And I don't know if that's happening. And I think that's different from the project that Sony supposedly was going forward with. So who knows, again, if any of these things are happening. One possibility, and I thought this was fascinating, is a sequel to this film. That in the LA Times review, Kenneth Turan references this as the beginning of a planned trilogy, which was not something that I had ever heard about. And I was sort of trying to look up more about that. And I found an interview with Oscar Isaac from around the time that this was released. And he said that the plan was for movies set 10 years apart. So another movie set in 1991 and then one in 2001. And then as recently as 2023, Jessica Chastain in an interview said that she is waiting on the script for the sequel from J.C. Chandor. And she said, when I first met with him, he pitched me this whole idea and I think it's amazing. So I'm waiting. I'm just waiting to get a script. So
come on, bro. Get it together,
would be
Chandor.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that makes, when you were literally saying that, I'm like, in my mind, it's 10 years later and, Abel is getting out of jail and Anna's risen to power. There's so many different ways. And then it's 20 years later and, they're getting knocked off, but now they're the establishment and they're getting knocked off by the new guy. There's so many different ways you could take this. Get to that. Do that.
Yeah. And I think the idea too was to look at violence in New York City in those eras. Obviously in 2001, you have 9/11. And I don't know what it was like in 1991, but I think you could really examine that in a lot of ways in their relationship. It'd be like the Before trilogy of New York City gangster movies. Yeah. I'm all for it. So in the meantime, though, Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain, of course, both very, very big stars, both hugely acclaimed. Oscar Isaac has the Star Wars movies. He did his own Marvel thing as the star of Moon Knight. He's done stuff with Alex Garland and Ex Machina and Annihilation. He's going to be Dr. Frankenstein in the Guillermo del Toro movie that's coming up. Was great in the David Simon series, Show Me a Hero. And he and Jessica Chastain reunited together in the Scenes from a Marriage remake, which I've never seen, but I think is supposed to be very intense.
What about the Show Me a Hero?
It's good. Yeah. Good. Did you ever see it?
No. Was that 6 episodes there? Is that 6?
I think something like that. Yeah. I mean, and it's very similar to this in that, I mean, I feel like David Simon in The Wire is another big influence on this film.
Yeah. Maybe I should do that and We Own the Night back to back.
There you go. Yeah. People I saw mentioning James Gray as an influence, and I'm really not a James Gray fan, so I wouldn't necessarily, but I think they are approaching genre in a similar way.
I meant We Own the City. So that's the David Simon, but both work. Yeah, he's also in the new Tony Gilroy movie. And of course, because he's Oscar Isaac, he'll be in the Metal Gear Solid, kind of, he needs another franchise.
Yeah, why not? And Jessica Chastain also doing tons of stuff. She also worked with Guillermo del Toro on Crimson Peak, which I think is a super underrated Del Toro film. She did Molly's Game, the Aaron Sorkin movie, which I think is pretty good. It Chapter 2. She won an Oscar for playing Tammy Faye Baker in The Eyes of Tammy Faye. She played another famous Tammy in George and Tammy as Tammy Wynette, opposite Michael Shannon. So I feel like she's maybe in the last 5 years or so been slightly lower profile. She's done a lot of more indie type films, but still great.
Tons of limited series coming up. The things I marked were actually movies. Lear Rex, which is a take on King Lear with, I think, Al Pacino. And Josh, if you thought Barry Levinson didn't have one more in him, he's got Assassination, well, also with Pacino, the fateful murder of John F. Kennedy, reimagining his death as a hit ordered by Chicago kingpin Sam Giancana as payback for JFK's attempt to undermine the mob after they helped get him elected. That sounds like a J.C. Chandor movie.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I didn't see Dave. You saw the Alto Nights, right?
No, I actually ended up not seeing it. Yeah, so
I just assumed it was a terrible movie that you saw and loved. So
right. The guy from Variety has it on his top 10 of the first half of the year. So he's really pushing hard for it. So.
Yeah, he's the only one. So I mean, there's tons of very recognizable actors in this. Jason, you mentioned lawman Bass Reeves, the Taylor Sheridan show that David Oyelowo starred in. He's done a lot of, he got a high profile role in Selma as Martin Luther King, which was the same year as this. And, then more kind of supporting roles. He's also on TV on Silo, the Apple TV sci-fi series that a lot of people like, but, working steadily and always, I think, a welcome presence.
Big part in The Brutalist last year. And he'll be in the new Downton Abbey, the grand finale movie. So, wait a second. That's Nivola I'm talking about, Josh. Is that who we're talking about? Yeah,
I was talking about David Oyelowo, who plays the district attorney here.
He's the star of Government Cheese right now on Apple TV. So, yeah, he's good too. And Nivola, man, I just mentioned his credits. So there you go.
Yeah. And of course, I think, as I said earlier, Christopher Abbott and Alessandro Nivola both in Craven playing ridiculous nonsensical villains.
Christopher Abbott, though, is like he's like one of those guys to watch. He's definitely like the next big leading man if he wants to be as an actor. He's very good. You could definitely see him just doing like 8 Noah Baumbach movies in a row coming up or something like that.
Yeah, he is very good. And he has a very small part in here. But again, a lot of really strong actors in small parts. I did want to mention Elyes Gabel, who does not have a small part, who plays Julian. And this seems like this could have been a big showcase for him, but he has been in very few movies. He's mostly been on TV. He was on Scorpion, which was a long-running kind of CBS procedural, as well as Suspicion, another Apple TV series. But, doing fine, but definitely not up at that next level that you might have imagined if this movie had been more successful.
Jerry Adler, Hirsch, always calling people Boychik on The Sopranos. I loved it. And I did want to mention this cool Christopher Abbott project. Speaking of The Brutalist, Mona Fastvold, which is the co-writer of The Brutalist and Brady Corbet's partner, is doing a movie called Ann Lee with Abbott and Tim Blake Nelson, starring Amanda Seyfried as Ann Lee, the founder of the Shakers religious movement. That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, I would look forward to that. And anything else you want to say about the legacy of this movie?
I look forward to your next pick because you're on a roll, baby.
Thank you. Well, I forget what my pick is next season, but maybe we'll go back to you questioning my taste, but we'll see. For now, I'm happy that you enjoyed this film and that we all did. And hopefully you, our listeners, also enjoyed this film. That is A Most Violent Year. And that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can intimidate us online and on social media.
Awesome Movie Year on the Face. Awesome Movie Year on the Insta. Awesome Movie Year on the .com. I'm Jason Harris Comedy on all those things. Find me also at Go for Jason on Letterboxd. Also look up Beat This Comedy and the Trivia Party on the Grams.
You can check out some old things from me at joshbellhateseverything.com. I am at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, at Signal Bleed on Blue Sky and on Letterboxd. And if you're on Letterboxd and you watch this movie or any of the movies we talk about on the show, tag your review Awesome Movie Year. We would love to know what you think. And check out our producer David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on social media at PiecingPod.
Jason, what's in our next episode?
Josh, will it be a triangle of sadness for us? Who knows? We'll talk about it in the square right here. We're going to Ruben Östlund's Force Majeure.
That is our foreign film pick, so tune in next time for Force Majeure, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.